The fall of a hero. Commander Zarkesh stood at the helm of his battlecruiser, the Starfire, his four eyes scanning the swirling chaos of the space battle before him. The Hive, a relentless insectoid race bent on consuming all life in the galaxy, had pushed deep into Alliance territory. This was to be their last stand. Status report, Zarkesh commanded, his voice steady despite the tremors shaking the ship. His second-in-command, a lithe blue-skinned Aquarian named Naira, responded without looking up from her console. Shields at 30%, Commander. We've lost contact with the Orion and the Starhammer. The Hive's mothership is advancing. Zarkesh's mandibles clicked in frustration. The Alliance fleet was crumbling around them, overwhelmed by the sheer number of Hive ships. He had known this battle would be difficult, but he hadn't expected such devastating losses. Divert all power to forward shields, he ordered. We're going to punch through their line and hit that mothership directly. Naira's head snapped up, her luminous eyes wide with disbelief. Commander, that's suicide. We can't possibly. We don't have a choice. Zarkesh cut her off. If that mothership breaches the Hydra system's defenses, billions will die. We end this here. As the Starfire surged forward, plowing through swarms of smaller Hive ships, Zarkesh felt a familiar rush of adrenaline. He had built his reputation on bold, often reckless maneuvers like this. The Alliance had come to see him as invincible, a hero who could turn the tide of any battle. But as the Hive mothership loomed before them, filling the view screen with its grotesque, organic hull, Zarkesh felt a flicker of doubt. He pushed it aside. There was no room for hesitation now. All weapons, fire at will, he roared. The Starfire unleashed a barrage of energy beams and missiles, tearing into the mothership's outer defenses. For a moment, it seemed like they might succeed. Then a massive tendril erupted from the Hive ship, wrapping around the Starfire's hull. Shields failing. Naira shouted over the sound of tearing metal. We're being pulled in. Zarkesh gripped the arms of his command chair, his mind racing. Overload the engines, he said, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. We'll take them down with us. As his crew scrambled to comply, Zarkesh opened a comm channel to the rest of the fleet. This is Commander Zarkesh. The Starfire is lost, but we will ensure the mothership falls. It has been an honor serving with you all. For the Alliance. He cut the transmission and closed his eyes, waiting for the end. But instead of an explosion, he heard Naira's confused voice. Commander, the fleet is retreating. They're leaving us behind. Zarkesh's eyes snapped open. On the view screen, he watched in disbelief as the remaining Alliance ships turned and fled, jumping to hyperspace one by one. They were abandoning him, leaving him to die at the hands of the Hive. Impossible, he whispered. They wouldn't. But they had. As the Hive ship's tendrils tore through the Starfire's hull, Zarkesh realized the bitter truth. He had been betrayed, sacrificed for reasons he couldn't fathom. The hero of the Alliance, left to perish alone. The ship's systems failed around him, alarms blaring as the atmosphere vented into space. In the chaos, Zarkesh found himself pushed into an escape pod by Naira. Live to fight another day, Commander, she said, her eyes filled with sorrow. Before he could protest, she slammed the launch button. Zarkesh watched helplessly as the pod shot away from the dying Starfire. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the Hive mothership imploding, torn apart by the Starfire's final desperate attack. He awoke to pain and stillness. The escape pod had crashed on a desolate, rocky planet. Every breath sent spikes of agony through Zarkesh's body. He was alive, but badly injured. As he dragged himself from the wreckage, he realized the full extent of his situation. The planet was harsh and uninhabited, its atmosphere barely breathable. His distress beacon was damaged, broadcasting weakly if at all. And even if it wasn't, who would come for him? The Alliance had made their decision. They had left him to die. As Zarkesh limped across the barren landscape, searching for shelter, His mind grappled with the reality of his betrayal. He had given everything to the Alliance, sacrificed his own people's neutrality to join the fight against the Hive. And this was how they repaid him. The sun beat down mercilessly, its rays amplified by the thin atmosphere. Zarkesh's vision swam, his injuries and dehydration taking their toll. He stumbled, falling to his knees on the rocky ground. As darkness crept in at the edges of his vision, Zarkesh looked up at the alien sky. Somewhere up there, the Alliance continued its war against the Hive. But down here, on this forgotten world, their greatest hero lay dying. With the last of his strength, Zarkesh crawled into the shadow of a large boulder. He had no food, no water, and no hope of rescue. All he could do now was wait for the end. As consciousness slipped away, Zarkesh's final thoughts were not of anger or betrayal, but of regret. He had failed in his mission to protect the galaxy, and now he would die alone, forgotten by those he had sworn to defend. The once great Commander Zarkesh, hero of 100 battles, savior of countless worlds, closed his eyes and surrendered to the encroaching darkness. Unbeknownst to him, fate had other plans, for even as he lay dying on that desolate world, a battered ship was about to change course, drawn by a faint distress signal. And with it, a crew of beings Zarkesh had never encountered before. Humans. The fall of a hero was complete. But perhaps, just perhaps, this was not the end of his story, but the beginning of something far greater. Revelations and pursuit. The scrapper hurtled through space, pushing its engines to the limit as it raced towards the lawless frontier. Inside, Captain Ilara Chen paced the narrow confines of the bridge, her mind racing even faster than her ship. "Any sign of pursuit?" she asked, glancing at Zoe. The pilot shook her head, her eyes never leaving the sensor readouts. "Nothing yet. Looks like Milo's stealth modifications are holding up." Ilara nodded, allowing herself a small sigh of relief. But she knew they weren't out of danger yet. Not by a long shot. "How's our guest?" she asked, turning to Milo. The engineer ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Stable, but still unconscious. His physiology is, well, it's not like anything in our medical database. I'm doing my best, but..." He trailed off, shrugging helplessly. Ilara placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're doing great, Milo. We just need to keep him alive long enough to..." She was cut off by a sudden groan from the makeshift medical bay. In an instant, all three of them were crowded around the alien commander's bedside. Zarkesh's 4 eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then sharpening as they took in his surroundings. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound that Ilara guessed signified confusion or alarm. "Easy there, big guy," she said, trying to keep her voice calm and soothing. "You're safe. We found you crashed on that planet and brought you aboard our ship." Zarkesh's gaze locked onto her, and Ilara felt a shiver run down her spine. There was an intensity in those alien eyes, a depth of intelligence and experience that was almost palpable. "Humans," he said, his voice a low, resonant rumble. I know of your kind, but you were not there. Not in the battle." "How?" "We're salvagers," Ilara explained. "We picked up your distress signal by chance. But, Commander, we need to know. What happened?" "The entire galaxy thinks you died destroying the Hive mothership." Zarkesh's face, if you could call it that, contorted in what might have been pain or anger. "Betrayed," he hissed. "The Alliance, they left me to die. Used me as bait to lure the Hive into a trap." The humans exchanged shocked glances. The Alliance, the galactic government that was supposed to stand for peace and justice, had sacrificed their greatest hero. "But why?" Milo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zarkesh's eyes seemed to burn with inner fire. "Politics." He spat the word like a curse. "I had become inconvenient, too popular, a threat to those in power. They saw a chance to be rid of me, while scoring a victory against the Hive. 2 birds, 1 stone, as you humans might say." Ilara felt a cold fury building inside her. She had never been a fan of the Alliance and its heavy-handed policies, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. "Well," she said, her voice hard, "they didn't count on a bunch of human scrappers messing up their plans. You're alive, Commander, and we intend to keep you that way." Zarkesh regarded her for a long moment, then inclined his head in what she hoped was a gesture of respect. "You have my gratitude," he said, "but you must understand the danger you've placed yourselves in. The Alliance will not let this stand. They will come for me, and for you." As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Zoe's voice came over the intercom, tense and urgent. "Captain, we've got multiple ships dropping out of FTL. Alliance signatures. They found us." Ilara cursed under her breath. "So much for our stealth systems," she muttered. To Zarkesh, she said, "Looks like we're about to find out just how badly they want you back. Think you can move?" The alien commander pushed himself up, his movements stiff but determined. "I have fought through worse, Captain. Point me to your weapons." A grim smile spread across Ilara's face. "That's what I like to hear. Milo, help the commander to the gun turret. I'll be on the bridge." As they rushed to their stations, Ilara's mind whirled with possibilities. They were outgunned and outmatched, a single salvage ship against whom knew how many Alliance vessels. But they had one advantage. The Alliance couldn't risk destroying them, not if they wanted to keep Zarkesh's survival a secret. "All right, folks," she said as she strapped herself into the captain's chair. "Let's show these Alliance boys what happens when you mess with humanity and our new alien friend." The next few hours were a blur of frantic maneuvers, near misses, and desperate gambles. The Scrapper dove and weaved through asteroid fields, skimmed the surface of a gas giant, and at one point executed a slingshot maneuver around a neutron star that had Milo swearing he could feel his atoms coming apart. Through it all, Zarkesh proved his reputation was well earned. Despite his injuries, his accuracy with the gun turret was uncanny, picking off pursuing fighters and disabling larger ships with surgical precision. But it wasn't enough. The Alliance forces kept coming, wave after wave, slowly but surely wearing them down. As Ilara watched their shields failing and their fuel reserves dwindling, she knew they needed a miracle. That's when Milo's excited voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, I've been analyzing the data from the commander's escape pod. I think I found something, a hidden frequency buried in the static. It's not Alliance, and it's definitely not Hive." Ilara's heart raced. "Can you trace it?" "Already did," Milo replied, a note of triumph in his voice. "It's coming from a system just at the edge of the frontier. Unmapped, as far as I can tell." For a moment, Ilara hesitated. They were flying blind, chasing a signal they knew nothing about. It could be a trap, or something even worse than what they were running from. But one look at her crew's determined faces, at Zarkesh standing tall despite his injuries, and she knew they were all thinking the same thing. Whatever lay ahead couldn't be worse than the fate that awaited them if they surrendered to the Alliance. "Plot a course," she ordered, her voice steady. "Zoe, get ready for the jump to FTL. Milo, give us everything the engines have got. We're making a run for it." As the stars stretched into lines around them, the Alliance ships falling behind, Ilara felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. They were heading into the unknown, carrying with them a truth that could shake the foundations of galactic society. Whatever awaited them in that mysterious system, one thing was clear: the actions of this small group of humans had set in motion events that would change the course of history. The galaxy would never be the same again. And as the Scrapper vanished into the depths of space, leaving their pursuers far behind, Ilara couldn't help but smile. Humanity had just announced its presence on a galactic stage in a way no one could ignore. The real adventure, she realized, was only just beginning. Battle for survival. The Scrapper emerged from FTL in a system unlike any Ilara had ever seen. A massive red giant dominated the sky, its bloated form casting an eerie crimson glow over everything. Scattered around it were not planets, but what appeared to be enormous space stations, their designs a mix of organic curves and crystalline structures. "What in the name of?" Zoe whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the sight. Zarkesh leaned forward, his four eyes narrowing. "Impossible," he muttered. This shouldn't exist." Before Ilara could ask what he meant, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A voice, neither male nor female, neither young nor old, filled the breach. "Greetings, travelers. We've been expecting you." Ilara exchanged bewildered looks with her crew. "Expecting us?" she asked cautiously. "Who exactly are you?" There was a pause, as if the voice was considering its answer. "We are the architects," it finally said. "We have watched your journey with great interest. You carry with you a truth that must not be lost." Zarkesh stepped forward, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "The architects. I thought you were a myth. Stories told to younglings, nothing more." "Many wish us to be nothing more than stories, Commander Zarkesh," the voice replied. "It makes their games of power so much easier to play. But we are quite real, and you are in grave danger." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the ship. Milo's fingers flew over his console. "Multiple ships dropping out of FTL," he reported, his voice tense. "Alliance signatures, and something else. Something big." The view screen lit up with the sight of a massive fleet emerging from hyperspace. At its center was a ship that dwarfed even the largest Alliance dreadnoughts, its hull a nightmare of twisted metal and pulsing organic matter. "The Hive," Zarkesh growled. "They've allied with the Alliance. This is what I discovered, what they tried to silence me for." Ilara's mind reeled. The Alliance working with the Hive. It seemed impossible, and yet the evidence was right in front of them. "Your ship is in no condition to fight," the architect's voice said. "Make for the nearest station. We will offer what protection we can." Ilara didn't need to be told twice. "Zoe, you heard them. Get us to that station, now." The scrapper shot forward, its engines straining as it raced towards the nearest of the massive space stations. Behind them, the combined Alliance and Hive fleet opened fire, a barrage of energy weapons and biomissiles filling space. "Evasive maneuvers," Ilara shouted, gripping her chair as the ship bucked and weaved. Zarkesh manned the gun turret once more, his shots precise and devastating despite their desperate flight. But it wasn't enough. There were simply too many enemies, too much firepower directed their way. A hit rocked the ship, sending sparks flying from overloaded consoles. "Shields down!" Milo yelled over the cacophony of alarms. "One more hit like that, and we're done for." Ilara watched in horror as a massive Hive cruiser moved to cut them off from the architect's station. This was it, she thought. They had come so far, only to fail at the final hurdle. But then something extraordinary happened. The space station they had been aiming for seemed to come alive. Massive tendrils of energy shot out, enveloping the scrapper in a protective cocoon. Other beams lashed out at the attacking fleet, swatting ships aside like insects. "Fascinating," Zarkesh murmured, watching the display of power with wide eyes. The voice of the architect spoke again, this time with an edge of strain. "We cannot hold them off indefinitely. You must come aboard. There is much to discuss, and little time." As the scrapper was drawn into a docking bay within the station, Ilara felt a mix of relief and apprehension. They had escaped immediate danger, but they were now in the hands of beings so advanced they were considered mythical. What did the architects want with them? The ship settled onto the docking bay floor with a gentle thud. As the crew prepared to disembark, Ilara turned to Zarkesh. "I don't suppose you have any idea what we're walking into?" she asked. The alien commander shook his head. "In all my years, Captain, I'd never encountered anything like this. We are, as you humans say, in uncharted waters." Ilara nodded, squaring her shoulders. "Well then," she said with a grim smile, "let's go meet our hosts." As they stepped off the ship, they found themselves in a vast chamber that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The walls shifted and flowed like liquid, yet were solid to the touch. Lights pulsed in patterns that seemed to carry meaning just beyond comprehension. And there, waiting for them, were the architects. They were unlike anything Ilara had ever seen or imagined. Beings of pure energy, their forms constantly shifting, yet somehow maintaining a humanoid shape. They radiated an aura of ancient wisdom and unfathomable power. One of the architects floated forward, its voice resonating not through the air, but directly in their minds. "Welcome, brave travelers. You have stumbled upon a conflict as old as the stars themselves, and your actions may well determine the fate of all life in this galaxy." Ilara swallowed hard, suddenly very aware of how small and insignificant they must seem to these beings. But she stood tall, her voice steady as she spoke for her crew and their alien ally. "We're listening," she said. "Tell us what we need to know." As the architect began to speak, weaving a tale of ancient wars, hidden truths, and a conspiracy that spanned millennia, Ilara realized that their simple act of compassion, saving a dying alien on a forgotten world, had catapulted them into the center of a galactic storm. The battle for survival had only just begun. But as she looked at her crew, at Zarkesh standing proud beside them, she knew that humanity had found its place in this vast, dangerous universe. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The Alliance, the Hive, and whoever else stood in their way would soon learn a valuable lesson. Never underestimate the determination, creativity, and sheer stubborn will of humanity. The fate of the galaxy now rested in their hands, and Ilara Chen, captain of a scrappy salvage vessel, was ready to show the universe what humans were truly capable of. A new alliance. The revelations from the architects left Ilara and her crew reeling. The history they thought they knew was a carefully constructed lie, a facade hiding a millennia-old conflict that threatened the very fabric of the galaxy. "So let me get this straight," Milo said, his voice a mix of awe and disbelief. "The Alliance and the Hive aren't really enemies. They're two factions of the same ancient race, locked in a power struggle." The architect's form shimmered, its voice resonating in their minds. "Correct. What you know as the Alliance and the Hive are but two faces of the Primordials, a species that achieved spaceflight when your ancestors were still learning to use fire." Zarkesh's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of his agitation. "But the war, the countless lives lost, it was all a lie." "Not a lie," the architect corrected gently. "A grand game, played across millennia. The Primordials seek to shape the galaxy to their will, using younger races as pawns. Your conflict served to keep the galaxy divided, easier to manipulate." Ilara's mind raced, connecting the dots. "And you, where do the architects fit into all this?" The beam's form pulsed with what might have been sadness. "We are caretakers, guardians of balance. We have watched and waited, intervening only when absolutely necessary. But now, the game has grown too dangerous. The Primordials' conflict threatens not just this galaxy, but reality itself." "So why us?" Zoe asked, gesturing to their small group. "Why reveal all this to a bunch of human scrappers and one alien commander?" The architect turned its attention to Zarkesh. The commander discovered the truth, or part of it. His death was meant to bury that knowledge. "But you," it said, focusing on the humans, "you changed everything. Your compassion, your willingness to risk everything to save a life. It showed us that there might be another way." Ilara felt the weight of the architect's words settle on her shoulders. "What do you need us to do?" "We need you to unite the galaxy," the architect said simply. "To reveal the truth, to rally the younger races against the Primordials' manipulation. It will not be easy. Many will refuse to believe. Others will fight to maintain the status quo. But it is the only way to break the cycle and forge a new path. For a moment, silence reigned as the enormity of the task sank in. Then, to everyone's surprise, Zarkesh laughed. It was a strange, clicking sound, but unmistakably one of amusement. "When I awoke on your ship," he said, addressing the humans, "I thought my life was over, that everything I had fought for was lost. Instead, I find myself on the brink of the greatest battle of all, alongside the most unlikely of allies." He placed a hand on Ilara's shoulder. "I can think of no better companions for this fight." Ilara looked at her crew, seeing the determination in their eyes. They had started this journey as simple salvagers, looking for their next score. Now they stood at the crossroads of history, with the fate of the galaxy in their hands. "All right," she said, a fierce grin spreading across her face. "Where do we start?" The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Armed with the knowledge and technology provided by the architects, the Scrapper and its crew embarked on a daring campaign across the galaxy. They exposed the truth about the Alliance and the Hive, broadcasting evidence of the Primordials' deception to every world that would listen. They rescued other abandoned heroes, beings from 100 different species who had, like Zarkesh, come too close to the truth. It wasn't easy. They faced opposition at every turn. Alliance loyalists, Hive zealots, and those who simply refused to believe fought them at every step. But for every setback, there were triumphs. Worlds that threw off the yoke of primordial control. Heroes who joined their cause. And always, there were stories of the humans, the upstart species from a backwater planet that had dared to challenge the order of the galaxy. Ilara found herself at the center of it all, a reluctant leader thrust into the spotlight. But she wasn't alone. Zarkesh stood by her side, his tactical genius and hard-won wisdom proving invaluable. Milo's technical skills allowed them to stay one step ahead of their pursuers. Zoe's piloting got them out of more tight spots than Ilara could count. And slowly, inexorably, the tide began to turn. It all came to a head in a massive space battle above the primordial homeworld. Ships from 100 different species, once manipulated into fighting each other, now stood united against their true enemy. The Scrapper led the charge, Ilara and Zarkesh coordinating the assault from its bridge. The battle was fierce, the stakes unimaginably high. But in the end, it was a simple thing that tipped the balance, a message, broadcast by Ilara to every ship in the combat zone, human and alien alike. "We are not pawns. We are not tools to be used and discarded. We are living beings, each with our own hopes, dreams, and right to exist. Today, we take back our galaxy. Today, we forge our own destiny." The response was overwhelming. Ships from both the Alliance and Hive fleets turned on their primordial masters. The facade crumbled, and with it, the Primordials' hold on the galaxy. In the aftermath, as the dust of battle settled and the work of rebuilding began, Ilara found herself standing with Zarkesh in the architect's station, looking out at the stars. "So," she said, a hint of wonder in her voice, "what happens now?" Zarkesh's mandibles curved in what she had learned was a smile. "Now, Captain Chen, we build something new. A true alliance, founded not on deception and manipulation, but on mutual respect and understanding." The architect materialized beside them, its energy form pulsing gently. "The path ahead will not be easy," it warned. "Old hatreds do not die quickly, and the scars of millennia will take time to heal. But you have given the galaxy something it has not had in a very long time." "What's that?" Ilara asked. "Hope," the architect replied simply. As Ilara looked out at the stars, at the ships of 100 different species working together to clear the debris of battle, she felt a swell of pride. Humanity had entered the galactic stage as newcomers, outsiders. Now they stood at the forefront of a new era. They had saved a hero, uncovered a conspiracy, and changed the course of history. But more than that, they had shown the galaxy the best of what humanity had to offer: compassion, determination, and an unshakable belief in doing what was right, no matter the cost. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. But as Ilara turned to rejoin her crew, her family, she knew one thing for certain: whatever the universe had in store, they would face it together. For in the end, it wasn't advanced technology, political machinations, or even the guidance of ancient beings that had saved the galaxy. It was the simple, powerful choice of a few humans to help someone in need, to stand up for what they believed in, and to never, ever give up. In that moment, looking at the new alliance forming before her eyes, Ilara Chen, once a simple salvage captain, now a catalyst for galactic change, allowed herself a smile. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. And that, she thought, was the greatest adventure of all.